This video will help you pay less in tax and give more to charity. Hey everyone, if you don't know who I am, my name is Chris Dime. I'm a certified financial planner out of Edmonds, Washington, and I specialize in working with folks to and through retirement. It's getting close to the end of the year, so I thought today it would be helpful to cover qualified charitable distributions. We'll cover what they are, why you would ever do a qualified charitable distribution, some of the specific logistics to make sure you do it right, and then some warnings to be aware of. So what are qualified charitable distributions, or QCDs? Qualified charitable distributions are a method of making a donation to a charitable organization without ever taxing the individual to make that donation. Most of the time, whenever you'd make a donation to a charity, you'd pay whatever adjusted gross income taxes there are for whatever withdrawal you make from whatever account, and then later you'd itemize on your tax return those charitable contributions. The QCD is essentially the same thing, but it's more tax efficient because the money goes directly from a retirement account to the charity. The Secure Act had some updated legislation for QCDs, so this video will hopefully clarify what the current lay of the land is on making QCDs correctly. QCDs are available to be used for anybody over the age of 70 and a half. The maximum qualified charitable distribution you're allowed to make each year is $100,000 per person. You can still make donations above $100,000. However, if it does go above that $100,000 mark, then it's considered taxable income, and then later on your tax return you have to itemize those deductions. So we're back where we started before ever employing a QCD. It's not the end of the world and great strategy for the charity, just might not be as tax efficient as falling within the QCD's guidelines. Now, there is a chance you might not be able to make the full $100,000 QCD. You might have to make less than that as your exclusion amount. I'll cover why that is later on in the video, but for all intents and purposes, I would imagine most people could make a $100,000 QCD if they wanted to. So why would you ever make a qualified charitable distribution? Simply put, because it's the most tax efficient way to get money from your IRA to the charity directly. This results in you paying less in taxes because that money never hits your AGI, and the charity potentially netting more in charitable donation than they otherwise would have if you took the taxable distribution and then only gave the charity, we'll call it the net amount after taxes. The most popular reason I see for people employing a QCD is when they're past the age of 72 and they start getting hit with required minimum distributions out of their retirement account, and they don't need the money and they have a charity that they're particularly interested in funding. However, theoretically, after the age of 70 and a half, you're allowed to do a QCD at any point in your IRA, and or if you inherit a retirement account from someone, you're allowed to do a QCD immediately upon getting hit with those required minimum distributions. To keep it very simple, if you donate $1 or more to a charitable organization in the tax year, and either voluntarily or involuntarily, you're taking money out of your pre-tax IRA, then I would say QCDs should absolutely be a strategy you consider. Because if you're donating money to a charity and you have to take money out of your IRA, solely through some pivoting as to where you think about your incomes coming from, you'd save a bunch in taxes. To illustrate my point, let's take an example couple in their 80s. We'll call them Archie and Edith. And let's say they need 120 grand a year to fund their lifestyle, and all of that income is being met through rental income and royalties from a television show that they starred in. Let's say every year they're getting hit with required minimum distributions because they're in their 80s. And let's say those required minimum distributions are 20 grand a year. Well, typically what they would have done before hearing about this awesome strategy is they'd take the 20 grand out, they'd pay all their taxes, and then they'd go to make a donation to their charity with 15 grand a year, because that's roughly the net after tax amount of 20 grand at a 22% tax bracket. However, now they've heard about this awesome qualified charitable distribution strategy. Instead of taking that 20 grand out of their IRA, paying a bunch in taxes, and then later donating 15 grand a year to the charity, they just take that $20,000 required minimum distribution and directly send that to the charity for a full 20 grand, and Archie and Edith pay no more in tax. And in fact, their tax bill is actually less because that 20 grand never hit their adjusted gross income like it used to do before they heard about using the QCD. So some logistics to be aware of to make sure you do a QCD in the right way. Number one, never touch the money. Have your financial institution stroke a check directly to the charity out of your retirement account. That way you never touch the funds and it's a clean retirement account to charity transfer. Second thing, make sure you get a point of contact at the charitable organization to confirm when they've received that check. That way your paper trail's in order. Third thing, there is no special form for your tax return that says I made a qualified charitable distribution. You get the same 1099-R from the financial institution that everybody else gets. The difference is you're going to want to communicate directly with your tax preparer to ensure on your tax return they explicitly denote that 1099-R was a qualified charitable distribution. A couple warnings to be aware of as you're doing QCDs. Number one, you can't do this if you're considered a disqualified person. How the IRS defines disqualified person, I'll link down below. Essentially, I would think of it as anybody that really benefits themselves from making a donation to a charity. For example, if I run a nonprofit on the side and they pay me a salary of 300 grand a year, I can't make a donation from my retirement account to that charity because that's a direct conflict of interest. I'd be considered a disqualified person. Second warning sign to be aware of is to ensure that whatever organization you're planning to give the money to is considered by the IRS to be a charitable organization. Seems like a simple thing. The IRS actually has a tool to look up that organization. It's not infallible, which means if your organization you want to donate to isn't on that registry, it doesn't mean they're not a charitable organization. But if I were you, I would take that extra step and do all your due diligence to verify, just in case the IRS ever comes knocking. You did your due diligence, you verified, you're good to go. Another warning to be aware of is you can't make QCDs from a SEP IRA or simple IRA if they're still considered ongoing by the IRS. Again, I'll link down below as to how the IRS defines that, but for all intents and purposes, I would say if they're currently still active with another employer or a previous employer, the best practice is to roll that money, if you can, into your one traditional IRA, so everything's cut and clean, and then make the QCD from that IRA. Also, you definitely can't make qualified charitable distributions from a 401k or Roth 401k. Lastly, before when I mentioned that you might not be able to make the full $100,000 qualified charitable distribution, that's in the event that you're still funding your pre-tax IRA. The IRS puts forth a qualified charitable distribution deductible contribution offset. They have a worksheet, and again, I'll link that below too. They have a worksheet you can follow where if you're still funding your IRA in retirement past the age of 70 and a half, those count against your ability to make a qualified charitable distribution up to that $100,000 limit. Now, as always, there are ways to strategize around something like that. For example, removing prior year contributions from an IRA and or maybe funding Archie's IRA, not Edith's, and then making charitable distributions out of Edith's IRA. The IRS would look at that as two different people, so you'd be in the clear from there. That said, as always, might make sense just to plan ahead of time if you're planning to do something like this. So your call to action is to look at your long-term retirement plan and or this year and next year, and think about if you've made any charitable contributions this year and you're planning on, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, to take money out of your pre-tax IRA, to look at implementing a qualified charitable distribution to save you on taxes and to give the charity some more money. Of course, we talked about your retirement plan, so speak with your financial planner. We talked about your tax planning, so speak with your qualified tax professional. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat below, send me an email, we'll get you squared away. Have an awesome rest of the week. We'll talk to you later. Bye.